Thank you, Carter.
Hi, Ritu.
Hi, Shirley.
Woof, woof. Whose dog is that? Now let's see.
That's,
Do we have a
that's my dog.
quorum? Oh, hi, Ritu's dog. Do we have a quorum? Let's see. We've got me, you, I, Joe, 3, 4. Let's see. I'm still waiting for a quorum.
We have 11 panelists.
Yeah, is that enough for a quorum in the sense of, shall we combine all our panelists as a
It's
quorum?
actually increased now to 14.
Okay, so we can begin. Okay. Um, Hi there, everybody. I'm Shirley Secunda, and I am Chair of Community Board Two's Traffic and Transportation Committee. And I'd like to introduce you to the members of our committee. I will do that by doing a roll call because we can't just have them appear and raise their hand. So I will read names. First of all, Ritu Chatri, our Vice Chair.
Present.
Present. Joe Gallagher. I think I saw Joe's name. Okay, I'll go on. Janet Liff.
Hello.
Hi there, Janet. Ed Ma, I did see Ed's name too. Ed, can you hear me? Okay. I do know that these folks are there. Okay, Dan Miller.
I'm here.
Yeah, I know you're here too. Hi, Dan. And Lois Rakoff, are you here?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hi there, Lois, and I can certainly hear you, and I can
Good.
see you as well.
Thank you.
Okay. And Anthony Wong, are you here yet? I know Anthony's on his way. Okay. And Adam Zeldin, I do see. There you are, Adam.
Here.
Say hi. Okay, and I just want to point out 2 members of our committee who are going to be doing the technical assistance tonight. So Ritu, can you raise your hand? And Joe, can you just appear and raise your hand? Joe Gallagher?
Sorry, yes, I'm here. I'll be right with you.
Okay, and so Joe and Ritu are going to be my technical assistants. Ritu will be handling the chat submissions and helping me call on speakers, while Joe will time your speaking, and they're both going to do general everything. So just to tell you a little bit about our meeting tonight, it is a continuation of our discussion last month on open streets. And this time we'll be getting an update on the program and answers to our previous and also today's questions, as well as some inputs from actual open streets participants from the meatpacking bid and the Hudson Square bid. And as most of you know at this point, the Open Streets program provides for opening up streets to provide more room on the whole street, that is both sidewalk and street bed, for safe and comfortable social distancing for walkers and cyclists who are given priority. Since last month, we actually have some open streets, and I'd like to just read you the names of these streets. I will first put on my reading glasses and tell you which streets they are. Okay, so University Place between 13th Street and 4th Street on Sundays 8:30 p.m. to 8:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. McDougal Street between 4th Street and 8th Street on Sundays 8:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Greenwich Street between Canal and Spring Streets, and that's 7 days a week, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Jones Street between Bleecker Street and West 4th Street, that's also 7 days, but that's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 13th Street between 9th Avenue and Washington Street, 7 days, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. also, and Little West 12th Street between 9th Avenue and Washington Streets, also 7 days, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And I think with most of you know, with our meeting being virtual, it's somewhat different. You can use chat for questions and comments. And in chat, we just ask that you please stick with the issues. No insults, no bad language, which would really force us to close off the chat. Our basic procedure, for those who are familiar with our basic procedure when we're not virtual, is really the same as we always follow. First, we're going to get our presentations from DOT, which will be an update, and then overviews from the two participating bids that have agreed to be here tonight and tell us about what's been happening with their open streets. And after that, then the committee asks questions, and then we'll ask all of you to ask your questions and maybe even make a few comments. And you're probably all old hands at Zoom by now. You're probably a better hand than I am. We do want to point out, though, that one handy raise your hand symbol, which is on the right-hand bottom of most participant lists. So do raise your hand when the time comes for our guests to speak after the presentations and our questions, if you want to speak. Let's see how many folks there are here tonight, 40 participants. Well, you know, I think we're still going to limit the time for speaking to 2 minutes because there are quite a few folks here tonight. And now I would like to introduce Jennifer Leung of DOT, who's going to give you that update on open streets and also answer all your questions. So let's see, can we bring up Jennifer? She should be here, and bring her up as a panelist. There she goes. Hi, Jennifer, can you hear me? Maybe Jennifer, can you unmute yourself? Because I see you. Let's see. Yeah, she's definitely there.
Jennifer, I think last time you had called in. Can you tell us which what your last 3 numbers of your phone number are? You can just chat, put it in the chat. Got it. All right, I see you there. Jennifer, can you hear us?
Whoops.
Hello?
Yep, there we go.
There you are, Jennifer.
Can you hear me?
Hi.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I did the same thing last time. So I'm on the phone, but I can see you guys on the Zoom itself.
Oh,
so
good.
my name is Jennifer Young, DOT Manhattan Borough Commissioner's Office. I have quite a short update. Pretty much right now, we are continuing to receive applications for open streets. We are reviewing them internally, and we are reviewing each request individually with our sister agencies, including sanitation, fire department, and PD. The program in itself has become really less restrictive. We want this to pretty much work well, and we want everyone to take advantage of the additional space for traveling and for walking. We certainly like to keep this as simple as possible and less labor intensive. Although, you know, from the beginning, we were, you know, requesting that, you know, there's a partner. It is still preferred. The absence of one does not mean that it won't be considered if there's a benefit and support from the folks who live and work in the area. We certainly like to encourage folks to continue to apply. During last month, I know when we rolled the program, there were 2 separate links to it. One was for bids and the other one was more for like community and electeds. Regardless which one you end up getting, or it is best to just apply through our website because both of those just still goes to the same group of people anyway. I think it was their way of reviewing it and organizing it when they received the applications. I mean, currently, like for South of 14th Street, there are a total of like 14 locations for these open streets. As Shirley mentioned earlier, CB2 has 6 of them. These are all managed by our partners, and that includes the 6th precinct in itself. They actually cover this area, and they have been doing what they can to assist. This includes providing barriers as needed. They come to drop them off and they set them up, but by the end of the day, they break them down and they place them on the side. Because they cover this area, they do monitor these open streets. They may not be posted at these locations, but they do, drive around. They do check out, anytime there's an issue. That's their way of monitoring it. Certainly any issues should be reported to PD and also to us, so we can help address any issues that come up from these open streets. I certainly like to thank all the partners that are assisting us in this effort. I certainly like to hear more tonight from the community and also from the committee on how these open streets are operating. That's really what I have for now. I know that earlier today, there was a council hearing regarding restaurants and businesses and using, some of this right-of-way space that we have. At the moment, I actually don't have any updates on that yet because it was just, this morning. I'm sure in the upcoming weeks, I may be able to provide some information to the community board themselves. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. So then I guess we can immediately start questioning you. Oh, wait a minute. No, we're not going to. I forgot. We have guests from the two bids. And let's see now. One should be Ellen Bear. I see Ellen. Ellen, do you hear me? Oh, here we go. Right now, they are among the participants, and this is who we have to elevate as panelists. It would be Ellen Bear, Jacob McNally. Jacob, can you hear me? Oh, yeah. And Jeffrey LaFrancois.
Ellen has been unmuted. Jacob McNally's been unmuted. So if you could just check your own screen.
Hi.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, hi there, Ellen. Great. And Jeffrey, there you are. And so we just need Jake.
And
Jake McNally?
He's also up here. So why don't we let Ellen go first?
Okay.
Okay, Jake's with me, so it's fine.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And he'll correct me when I say the wrong things.
Okay, so it's a double team, a duo.
Exactly. So we had 3 open streets applications initially. We only have received approval for one. The other 2 are pending. The one that we received approval for is the one you mentioned, Shirley, on Greenwich between Canal and Spring.
Yes.
We knew when we submitted that that would be the least utilized one. The other 2 we submitted are for what we call Little Sixth, which is the 6th Avenue piece, the small piece from Spring to Broome that's west of Spring Street Park. We feel that'll be the most utilized one. But we're still waiting to hear about our approval for that. And our other one is for King Street between Greenwich and Hudson. As we predicted, the Greenwich Street one, the one on between Canal and Spring, is lightly utilized, but pleasantly utilized. There are some operational issues. The barriers that we've been given from the police department are quite heavy and difficult to move. And it's been a problem for our maintenance people, but we're doing it. One thing I do want to say is that I spoke at the hearing today that the city council had about outdoor dining.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that Commissioner Trottenberg introduced at that was the idea of self-certification for outdoor dining. So there'd be a set of guidelines set out, a set of tools set out, and then the bids and the business establishments, potentially, according to the proposal, would be able to certify that they had met those requirements. This is only on a temporary basis, obviously. I think that would be a great thing to do with open streets as well. I think bids can pretty well judge whether we're meeting the requirements. And right now, it's getting a little too complicated, I think, for us to really make it happen quickly. So I think it would be great if they could apply that to open streets as well. That's all I have to say. Jake, if I left anything out?
No, perfectly said.
Okay, thanks, guys. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, great. And
Ellen?
we'll first have Jeffrey. Jeffrey, do you hear me?
I can hear you. Hi, Shirley.
Hi there. And I'd like to have Jeffrey present too, and then we'll get back to the questions and we'll go in the same order. Okay, so Jeffrey, go to it.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Jeffrey LaFrancois from the Meatpacking District. Thanks for having this meeting and for being here today. We are pleased to be a part of the program and really thank you all for the support of the streets of the district that we've been able to make a part of the Open Streets program. Active right now is Little West 12th and 13th Street between 9th and Washington, 2 small blocks in what we call Meatpacking proper. We're very pleased with the operation of them. I want to echo Ellen's comments about the trickiness of the barricades. And then frankly, the blatant disregard of drivers to freely move the barricade out of the way and then not put it back in place is my most frequent complaint, actually, is that as soon as it's moved by a driver, if they have to move it, and then it's not put back in place, it makes the street no longer as safe for those using it more freely as it was before that driver went down. We are investing in some more and bigger signage because frankly, the city provided woefully inadequate signage, if I'm to put it politely. So we have now some 2x3 posters that we put on our French barricades, and we're frankly going as so far as buying some what I'm calling skirts to put on top of the French barricades to really make a statement, because I'm finding that education is key around these programs, and that while we know drivers like to think they can go anywhere they want at all times, no matter what. Getting them to not go down a street just because does come with education and more learning. And so we're dealing with that. What we see is happening is that there are appropriate uses for vehicles on the street. We've worked with the restaurants that have opened for takeout and delivery to make them understand what an open street is and sort of really base it on the shared street model. And one of the reasons we saw it as being really important to getting them sort of on the ground now was so that as the district begins to reopen and folks return back to their offices, to their stores, and more deliveries happen and all that kind of stuff, there's already a readjustment happening, right? Folks see the street as being different, and it's not going to be like it was 3 months ago, and we need to plan for that, because I think it's going to be hugely important and a big part of the Meatpacking District, I hope, return to success of needing space for New Yorkers to feel comfortable for going to A to B, whether it's going to work, going shopping, or getting a bite to eat. You know, we're gonna want space to be outside. And I think that in commercial districts in particular, we have a challenge around how we're gonna navigate our commercial traffic up against the needs of, you know, shared streets and our ground floor commercial operations. But we are up for the challenge and see it as being really important. One thing I want to flag, and again, thank the board for, we're still working with the city on figuring out Gansevoort Street from West 13th to Washington. We see that as a really critical link, frankly, of connecting a park, a plaza, many of our streets as a whole to making this more of a network. It also would extend a significant, you know, open streets capacity much further east, connecting with Jackson Square, and really allowing folks to go really safely all the way to 8th Avenue, and in some manner or another 7th Avenue. We're also managing a block, I know it's slightly outside of CB2, further north on 17th Street between 8th and 10th. That's proved to be a very different block. It's mixed use, it's residential. One block is part of the Fulton House NYC development. And so we are loving the learning experience that we're going through now, so that when things get busier, as we want them to, we know what to prepare for. The key thing I would like is for more permanent allowance from DOT. I will be frank, I want to put a planter in the middle of the road. I don't want a driver to be able to move a police barricade just because that they can. So these are the kinds of conversations we're continuing to have, and I want you to be aware of that. It's about education, it's about understanding, and I think in a bigger way, it's more about recognizing the use of our streets has changed, and we need to figure out how best to make it safe for everybody.
Okay, well, thank you, Jeffrey. And now I think we're going to go back to our Q&A and to the committee. And Jen?
Shirley, can I just interrupt you? Can you please fix your camera? I
Oh,
think it fell.
thank you, Rita.
You're upside down now.
I know. Oh, God.
All right, there we go.
Okay, I'm going to hold it for a minute, and we're going to open this up to questions to Jennifer. Jennifer, are you ready? Well,
Yes.
okay, from the committee to Jennifer. So let me just get back to the panelists. And Rita, you're going to be calling on people too. So I see Janet, actually. Janet Liff is first and asking the question to Jen.
Jeffrey brought up the signage, that they're creating their own signage. I have heard that DOT is creating better signage because a lot of the current signage is really set up for a pedestrian stopping and reading. So I guess the question is DOT going to provide better signage? And if not, you know, if somebody puts up, like, you know, Jeffrey put up a bigger, you know, 2 by 3 foot signage on a barricade, is that okay? Like, is that, you know, will the police leave it up if they're managing the barricades, or, you know, how are you handling that? So that's one question. And then my second question is, you know, Jeffrey bringing up the permanent, if there were participants who could create a shared street with better, you know, something other than barricades, are you open to that?
So for the first question, we provided a template or guidelines for the signage. At this time, we're not able to like mass produce these signages. So when, you know, when we choose a street and we have a partner, we give them the template, the guidelines, so they would produce that and use them for now. I mean, you know, it's good that Jeffrey's able to, you know, print out, you know, manufacture his own. And it's fine that he puts them on those French barriers that he's been given. So that's with the signage. Whether or not we will try to, you know, provide them ourselves, that's something that I can't answer at this time, only because this is rapidly moving quickly and our folks who are doing signs are not, I mean, they are concentrating citywide doing other, you know, typical maintenance stuff as it is. But then again, you know, with the city reopening, things may change actually. Then for your second question about, I guess when Jeffrey mentioned about providing planters as a way to deter vehicles from getting through quickly, well, I think we're open to that. The only thing is that with planters, if it's emergency vehicles, they would still need to find a way to move them out of the way. But that doesn't mean that we can't strategically place them on the street.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Can I just flag something on that? We would always want to be able to accommodate an emergency vehicle, whether there's a planter there or not, much like the barricades allow for that now. So the planning would just be that the turn has to be taken. You can't just whip into that corner. Just like if there's a commercial delivery or a need for local access on that street, it could be accessed. It's really about slowing that vehicle down and making them realize that road is not just for them.
Okay.
Okay, do we have anybody else that's asking questions from the committee? Anyone else? Okay, then you know what? I have several questions. Sorry I can't appear right now because I'm having a little trouble with being seen. However, oh, I think I got it. Okay, now. I'm going to ask my questions.
Shirley, I think you need to turn your camera back on.
I'm trying to, but I don't have my camera set up. Oh, now I do. Wait a minute now. Okay, here I go. Can everybody see me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm in operation again, and apologies to everyone. So, okay, I have some people that have raised their hands with questions. I see. Donna Rafferty? Donna, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Jeffrey,
Okay,
I just
what's
wanted
the
to know,
question?
what's the holdup with Gansevoort Street?
Jen, what is the holdup with Gansevoort Street? Jennifer?
It's
No,
Yeah, I'm
Jeffrey.
here.
I can jump in on that too. It's my understanding the first round of review, FDNY had concerns around it. They apparently called Gansevoort Street an emergency access street. They haven't DOT's promised me a follow-up that and a meeting as well. So that's where that one stands right now.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. And then Michael Levine.
Hi, quick question regarding the hours of operation. University Place is only closed in the morning and not the full day, and I'm not quite sure I remember how many of the other streets are that way. Can you explain the rationale for closing some streets only half of the day and other streets for the full day? Because I know University Place is being very successful when it is closed.
For University Place, it's managed by the Village Alliance. I guess when they applied, they indicated the hours that they were able to help assist us in managing it.
So it was the decision of the applicant, not of DOT.
Right, I can clarify that more. I think that it's a matter of staffing, Michael, and that right now there just are not enough people on staff to be manning the open street for 7 days a week. And they're hoping, by the way, to extend it. And incidentally, they are doing a co-op kind of arrangement with Washington Square Conservancy, which is handling 8th Street to 4th Street, University Place, and also McDougal Street. So I think they probably will be adding as they go along. I think they're just feeling their way right now. Okay. So does anybody else on the committee have any questions? Okay. So what have we got with the attendees? Well, we have Marna Lawrence. Marna, are you there? Marna?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. I'm doing it for the first time on my cell phone because I took a trip to the NYU Gardens here. So I guess I'm concerned that my last meeting, I didn't get an answer to one of my questions. So I'm going to ask that. And that question was, and forgive me because I'm not probably up on all of the process here, but how do we know that the person or the group is actually representative of the community? Did they go through a process to make sure that that's the case? And how do we know that because I have some concerns, I'm extremely frank, it's time for frankness, that there are some very, very strong underlying agendas having to do with transportation alternatives, people who are understandably concerned about too many cars and vehicles in the city, but at the same time would rather just see none of them. And so my concern is that it has a whole lot of ramifications if we go in that direction and they're the ones that take over, and we don't know who's saying that we should have, who it is in the community. Because, for example, in my community, we have the historic Mulberry Street Mall, which has turned out to be a disaster. The street was closed and it was a disaster. And I know that you're going to say that this is going to end on October, at the end of October, whatever. But I have strong suspicious feelings that may or may not be the case. The other thing is, so I'd like that question answered if it's possible, because the update started with DOT saying pedestrians, walkers, and cyclists are given priority. I myself have been hit by a cyclist who was going the wrong way on 13th Street. So I live in a neighborhood where there are cyclists riding on the sidewalk constantly, and both electric and otherwise, and quite quickly because they have to do their work, some of them, to get to their, whatever the reason is. And my experience as someone who does all of those, I don't ride bicycles, but sometimes the bicycles, I guess it's 7 o'clock, bless the people at NYU here. I find the bicycles to be at least as dangerous as the cars.
Now, Marla, can you kind of stick to
I'm sorry. Oh my God.
and explain what you're meaning? You've been concerned with what group had applied. Is that correct?
No, my concern is not what group. My concern is that there isn't a process that I've heard discussed in my answer there was no answer to that question last time, that is there a process to determine who it is? When, let's say someone wants to open up the street on Mulberry Street, who is it that says that that's the case? Is there a reach out to the community? And I haven't heard the answer to that question, how that goes. you know, other than the bids who are, you know, worried about or concerned, understandably, about their businesses.
Marna, can I just
Okay.
interrupt you here and just have you stick to asking a question, please?
That's my question. Did that question get answered last time? No, and I'm asking it now.
Jennifer, are you there? Jennifer,
I'm
can
here.
you answer that exactly?
So
You got the question.
right at this, sure. I think at this moment, when it comes to, you know, any group or individual, right now we're looking at applications not totally, you know, by the partner themselves. I mean, right now anyone can really apply. If there's enough people that apply for the same block, then we see that that may be something that they want to see as an open street, which we can still consider and move it through the process in itself. And what's going to happen is that just because, you know, I mentioned earlier as part of my update is that, you know, if there was no partner, you know, what we are able to do is that we could still have PD drop off some barriers and still have the street become a open street anyway. The only thing is that, you know, if there's a partner, then, you know, the partner will also be our eyes and ears. And if there's anything that's going on that we need to know, then they will be able to contact us immediately. Because I could say that easily for Jones Street, that one is managed by PD. What they do is that they just drop off the barriers. I mean, that's already been done. So each day or whenever that period of time that they have the open street, they set it up and then they break it down at the end of the day.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Would it be fair to say that the criteria that you use for choosing the partners, participants, whatever you want to call them, is really based on their ability to perform the project?
That was part of the guidelines in the very beginning, but right at this point, we are not saying that we don't follow those guidelines, but we are not strictly, you know, okay, you know, whoever applied, they don't fit this criteria. We don't want to, we're trying to really open up more open streets. That's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to, you know, disqualify people just because they're not qualified. Like when we go through the review process, we look at every bits and pieces of like the street in itself, the land uses, you know, if there's anything that could, you know, make it impossible for us to keep this as an open street or whatnot. Yeah, once, you know, internally, that's what we look at. And then once we've, you know, select, you know, some of the applications, then we move it along to our other folks who need to look at them, which means sanitation, FDNY, and police department.
Okay, thanks. Does that answer your question, Marla? I guess it does. She left it off. Okay, and now Zella Jones. Hi, Zella. Zella?
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Where to begin here? I totally appreciate the burden that is on the Department of Transportation here, given these emergency directives. And I totally appreciate that they are neither staffed nor prepared to undertake the management of streets by others, the appropriation of streets by restaurants. This is an enormous task. So I will start there because I do not care to insult Jennifer in any way. My immediate question is how the Department of Transportation is determining the difference or the compatibility of street closures or street modifications for open streets for recreation and open streets or modified streets for restaurant use. Answer that question.
Right now, for recreational use and for business use, business/open dining, all that, we don't have anything at the moment. This is fairly new to us to look into. Right from, I guess, until today, open streets was pretty much a street for peds and cyclists.
Right, so that's a real good one for you to go back and get us the answer to, right, Jen?
Great. Yes. I know there's going to be a lot of,
we're all
you know,
worried about that balance and how it's going to be handled, and will there be specific requirements so that you can
exactly.
separate?
There's going to be a lot of work on our end.
So right now, I can say in your answer, you'll come back, correct?
I will have to, I assume.
Jennifer, we have a question from the chat room, and that is, have any streets in NoHo been considered? And if not, how can they apply for an open street in NoHo?
They can certainly apply going through our website, nyc.gov/openstreets. It's just an online survey. You just have to click on it and apply. NoHo, let me think. Trying to think if I recall any applications from that area. I honestly can't recall any. I mean, maybe there were, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure what streets were actually, like, I'm not sure what applications actually came through for NoHo area.
Okay.
Jen, could you provide that website address? Maybe put it in the chat room.
Put it in the chat room.
Yep.
Can you do that? Okay.
And then Shirley, we have Lois, who has been patiently waiting to ask the question.
So sorry, Lois.
No, that's okay. My question is to Jennifer. I think it was either Shirley or Jennifer that mentioned that currently there are 6 open streets in CB2. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, could you state the streets again and the sponsors who are sponsoring that? I have the Hudson Bid. I have the meat packing.
Lois, can you look at the chat line?
I can do that. Is that okay? Jennifer, do you want me to do it?
They're all listed in the chat right now.
They're all listed in the chat.
Okay.
Joe and I have both cut and pasted.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Nothing else then. Anybody else? How about very specific questions for either of the bids? Does anybody have any specific questions?
Also, Shirley, I think there's a question from Dan Miller.
Oh, okay. Dan, go to it.
There we go. I have a question, and that is, Jennifer, you mentioned you don't need a partner in which to create a street closed off. How does that work exactly? If you don't need a partner, and then before you needed a partner?
Before we actually required a partner, but then we also receive a lot of individual applications from constituents. I think when we try to look at the overall applications that came in, because we would look at them in a group of them, and then we look at the location. And what happens is that if there was a location that we thought, hey, you know what, this block looks like it's short, it's simple, let's give it a try. And when we do that, we probably end up speaking to PD, FDNY to see if they can help with that. Okay. I mean, for CB2, the 6th precinct, they actually, you know, they help us manage our Jones Street, but at the same time, all the other open streets in the same district, if there's a need for, you know, some barriers or, you know, assistance in any issues, they would actually be helping out as well. So I think that's what we end up working with.
Is the partner then?
Yes. Yep. I mean, every time we speak to PD, we have to check with them and say, hey, would you be able to include this as a open street in your area? If they say they have people that then can check it out and be able to help us day to day or, you know, help us monitor it here and there, as long as they say yes to it, then we give that an okay.
Okay.
Shirley, this is Joe. I had a question maybe for the bids.
Oh, okay.
The bids, or just a statement. I wonder if there's any way of them looking for volunteers. So if that's the thing that's constraining them is not having the ability to staff. If, you know, I bet there might be neighborhood volunteers that would be willing to do it one day a week, or, you know, if it's working really well for places like University Place. Just a suggestion.
Jennifer, do you have any comment on that?
In terms of having volunteers?
Yeah.
I would say that for any street, any open street, if there's someone who's willing to do something like that, they can. I mean, I don't want to say that you're not allowed to do that. I mean, I think it would be helpful that, sometimes, when there's not someone there and then they can, say like the barrier's out of place, if they can, walk up to it and, shift it back, that would be great.
And how
I mean,
about, are you
I
done?
would say other than that, the only other way to move to something back is if you were to, call either if there's a partner. If not, then you would have to call PD and say, hey, the barrier has moved out of place. Can you come by and, move it back? But I don't know. I think that's something that, has always been something that we did hear about. But, that's why it's always best to have a partner. But if there's not a partner that doesn't, like, we don't want to say to people, oh, they want this street, but then it can't happen.
Okay. And how about Ellen and Jeffrey? Have you thought about volunteers? Jeffrey,
PD has been calling a lot of the shots here. And I don't think the issue is just getting volunteers. There are liability issues and all sorts of issues about moving things around. I think the issue is trying to think about these things temporally, so that there are some things are good closed for a few hours a day, but not other hours of the, I mean, there needs to be a lot of flexibility. And Janet said something that I seized on right away, which was, these are shared streets, not open streets. Right. And I think that I really want to call them shared streets. And I think that we really need to start thinking about the whole program holistically, and how can we be flexible to have a few hours here, a few hours there, and the whole community gets involved in thinking about how does it work. Maybe you have truck traffic at one time, but not at another time. Maybe you have the need to close streets down because there are residents adjacent to it. I think that the issue is a cultural one as much as anything else, and that's a big leap.
That's very good points. Okay, you know what?
Shirley,
I have a lot of questions.
Shirley, I had a question too, but
okay, no. Oh, listen, and I have not introduced Carter Booth, who is the chair of Community Board 2, who is also helping us out technologically. Go to it, Carter.
I was going to say, it was interesting to hear, Ellen, you were saying that your barriers are too heavy, and then Jeffrey saying they're not heavy enough because people are moving them. And then it was great to see the Village Alliance have their open street on Sunday, considering Astor Place was a war zone on Saturday night. And, almost half their garbage cans were lit on fire. Stuff was spread out all over the streets. Some of the barriers were actually lit on fire for the wood barriers. And I think there were about 8 police vans that were burned as well. And one of the concerns, Jennifer, is that there's some unrest. A lot of these barriers are out floating around. The sanitation department just picked up all the trash cans in large parts of our community. How are you guys managing that? It's a big concern for us because we are a nexus of where
I can't do anything.
And
we're
just wondering what, if you guys have thought about that, or what your guys' stance is.
When I'm not understanding what the question is, are you asking when there are barriers that are left?
We're concerned your barriers are going to be thrown through storefront windows and that they're going to be lit on fire. Okay. And that's happening in our community. It's a lot less, after the last 2 nights, but it's still happening. And just wondering how you guys are managing the metal barriers, just in general. It's a big concern that people have right now.
Okay. I don't have an answer to that, but I will take it back.
How are the other bids handling it? Ellen, how are you handling it? Jeffrey, how are you handling that? I know how the Village Alliance is handling it. I'm not doing anything.
I'll be frank. Sunday night and Monday night was a nightmare in the meatpacking district. Almost 25. Ritu, we were on the phone. Almost 25 stores experienced storefronts, I should say, experienced vandalism, everything from tearing the boards down that had been put up to smashing windows to repeatedly looting places. And knock on wood, they didn't use our open streets barricades. In fact, some of the security in the neighborhood used them to block off certain streets because we found that the planning going into this, folks are driving to these destinations, looting stores and driving away. On Tuesday afternoon, I asked the 6th precinct to drop Jersey barriers across intersections so that cars couldn't get down the street and so quickly be able to unload, loot, and reload and leave. And they sort of laughed at me. And then 3 hours later, the mayor said there's no traffic allowed south of 96th Street. So I guess to an extent, I got my Jersey barriers, but not as specific. And I will be honest, we have not had issues since that order was put into place. And I really think that's played a part, not all of it, but a part in it. Yeah, we're nervous. It makes me nervous, but I would say 95% of the district is boarded up right now. You can see over my shoulder, just a bit of positivity. I did the street picture with the open street. That blue sign is our 2x3 sign that has all the DOT approved language on it with logos and all that good stuff. But I mean, no, all our garbage cans were removed. Pretty much the only thing on the street actually out there right now are these barricades. So we're concerned, but at the same time, we haven't had an issue with them thus far. And then just to note on the volunteer factor, the first day we did the open streets, I think it's almost been 2-3 weeks now, but the complaint that Speaker Johnson's office got was somebody who felt it wasn't safe enough for her 2- and 3-year-olds to be in the middle of the street. And she was there on day one with her 3-year-old kid. I understand concerns around that, but she also didn't feel it okay to put the barrier back in place in the road. And I think that it's important that New Yorkers recognize that you can put a barrier back in place if it was there to begin with. And I talked to a resident this past Sunday when I was in the district, and it was up on 17th Street outside of meatpacking. A lot of the restaurants in meatpacking actually have been a part of moving them into place when they get shifted aside. And he complained to me, he said, I just get annoyed that I have to put them back in place all day long. He's like, I'm gonna keep doing it, but I wish I didn't have to. So to me, that's the frustration, right? We want this to work. And there are flagrant violators of this becoming a part of our city's streets. So how can we make it so that residents aren't annoyed, that it can't just be something that works well? I like the idea of volunteers. The first 2 days I did have somebody there flyering on 17th Street, wanted to make sure folks knew what was going on because it was such a residential community. We were able to have direct conversations with all our businesses and the property owners on the blocks in CB2, which is why it made it a whole lot easier. And we found that to be, a big way of reaching people. And that's what has prevented so many complaints from it happening. But again, to me, drop a planter so that they either slow down on the turn or don't make it to begin with because it's no longer a through street, is my thing.
Right. How about you, Ellen? Any comments?
We don't have the metal barriers. We have the wooden ones, which is why ours are too heavy and his are too light. I guess we're glad we have the wooden ones now. I think what I'm hearing from everybody, and this is such a good conversation to have, we have so much to learn. This is a new model. And yes, it's temporary, but who knows how long temporary is going to be. And there's just so much to learn about the idea of sharing streets and citizens getting involved. And I think a lot of what we have to do is just kind of keep having these kinds of conversations and trusting each other as much as we can.
Yeah, I guess as a follow-up, I don't think it'd be that hard, with the wood barriers or with the metal barriers to lock them up. Whether it's drilling a hole in the wood barriers just so you can run a cable through them. And I mean, I don't, it's awkward to bring this up for people who haven't seen what's happened, like to actually watch what happens with sort of some of the protests that are a little rougher around the edges than the very peaceful ones during the day. There's this, it's a small component of people just throw everything in the street that's loose. The NoHo bid, every single planter was knocked into the street and all their trees were out in the street, and
Carter, can I just interrupt you for a second over here? I would like you to use different words there are protesters and then there are looters. And one are legitimate people on the street who have the right to express themselves, and the others are criminals that are trying to take advantage of this situation. So I think we need to differentiate.
Excuse me, I'm the chair here, and I would like to just get back to the subject that we're discussing all together. And Ellen, will you finish with what you
I wasn't
say?
actually finished.
I was talking to Ellen. I'm addressing Ellen Carter.
Well, Ritu interrupted me, and I wanted to finish my statement.
I just want to make sure that Ellen was done with what she was saying as far as
I'm good.
barriers. Okay, so Carter, please continue.
So what I was saying,
you just address the
I am
concerns
addressing
we're having about open streets.
Surely this is actually addressing it, because this is
okay. Fine, go ahead, Carter.
Ritu's not incorrect, but what's interesting, there's actually 3 groups, and it is the looters. You're right, and I've said this many times. You don't want to use in the same sentence both groups because they are very different. But what's happening is it's not so much the looters, it's people who are throwing everything into the street. And that's what is happening, and it's to prevent the police vehicles from following them. And it's also the trash that's being lit on fire, and it's not necessarily people breaking into the storefront. So the loose items on the street has been a huge thing. Jeffrey addressed that, that's, I think that all the bids here have had their trash cans picked up. And so that's just why I bring up the concern with these barriers, because they're frankly what's left. And so just simply locking them up, would go a long way for some of the peace, I think, for some of the residents around here.
Okay, and locking up the barriers would apply to both the bids and then Jones Street, which is the only other type of open street we have right now. And would that be feasible, Jeffrey and Ellen, to be locking up the barriers in some way? I mean, how could that be done?
Well, we'd have to have storage space, and our barriers, the wooden barriers, are very hard, and I don't think they need to be locked up, frankly. I also think we want to look. What's happening right now is heartbreaking, but it's not the norm, I hope. And I just want to be sure that we can have a conversation about how to make things function over an 12 to 18 month period, and hope that the heartbreak and the difficulty now passes. There's not too much bids can do about what's going on now, although we're happy to hear suggestions for how we can help.
Right.
The locking up within a storage space is just getting a 10-foot cable with a padlock.
I would like, excuse me, did everybody else ask questions? No, Matthew Metzger. Where are you, Matthew Metzger?
Hey, sorry.
I hear you.
How are you? So I felt like Ritu might have been in the middle of a sentence, and it was a sentence I wanted to hear the ending of, and so I just thought I might encourage her to finish that sentence. Sorry, thank you.
No, I just wanted to be careful that we differentiated what was happening in our community. And I was one of the people that went out with and saw firsthand on Sunday night what was going on, and reported it, as a matter of fact, to Jeffrey, and went back on the street. And there are different groups, and there is a larger issue that's going on in our city right now beyond coronavirus. And I think we just need to be cognizant and respectful of those differences and not lump everything in together. That was my point.
Right, and we got your point, and thank you, Ritu. And if it seemed like I wasn't letting you continue, I think you got your point across. Thank you. But I would like to get back to the subject of open streets, although we know that the way things are right now, they almost seem like they're in the background. But that is the purpose of this meeting. And from what I can see, we don't have any other questions, but I have some questions. And for DOT first, Jennifer, are you ready for my questions?
Sure.
Okay. So one of my questions was, is there more help for those who want to apply for open streets. And I think you made it quite clear that now there is some help in terms of setting up barriers and taking them down and basically monitoring. So how often is that monitoring done? Do you have any idea?
That I don't have an answer to.
Okay, so maybe we can get some.
I can certainly follow up with my team because I think our folks, some of them, they have been visiting some of these open streets and checking them out. So maybe they might have something, so I'll check.
Okay, that would be great to get. And okay, this was a subject that's been discussed. Does DOT have any thoughts about what can be done to provide incentive to those who drive in and out to replace the barriers where they were? I mean, has this kind of thing been done before in other circumstances? And in those circumstances, were there certain kinds of provisos issued so that drivers would understand that they have to replace the barriers when they remove them? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know what I can say about that.
Okay, it might be helpful if you could check with DOT and see if they have any suggestions about how to handle that, because that's really, obviously, from all the input we've been getting tonight, a rather concerning kind of situation. Okay, so you'll get back to us on that. Okay. And, there was another part of this program, which was that although you don't have through traffic, parking is allowed and retrieval is parking is allowed. And I wondered, for who? Is it just the local folks on the block?
Well, any street that already has parking, usually who parks there would be someone who lives there, right? I mean,
No.
if it's not residency, if there's a business, then maybe people are coming to and from.
So is it in your guidelines that the people that do park on the open street block or blocks, that they would be have to be either residents or businesses on that block?
Typically, that's what it is. Like, we're not saying that any open streets that, cars have to be removed, but they are allowed to go in and, park and leave, and like they're able to come in and out.
So you would say it usually is residents and businesses. But there is the possibility somebody else not from that block might be parking there, correct?
Yeah, that's a possibility.
That might be
but I don't
something
think
to be considered as far as restraining anybody but real locals from parking. That's one thing. I'm just curious. Okay, so you did say, I had the question and I think you answered it, that NYPD now is placing and removing barriers at the start and end of closure daily. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yep. And is there some sort of setup, for instance, a DOT liaison who can work with the blocks, the applicants who want to do open streets? For instance, there was just somebody from NoHo who was asking about applying. Could they go to somebody and get some guidance? Is there some kind of liaison set up for that?
We don't have a liaison for that. The Borough Commissioner's Office, most likely me and my colleagues, you can certainly send something to me. There is also a Open Streets email that they can send emails to and ask questions.
Oh, okay, or an Open Streets email. Okay, maybe we can put that.
I'll see if I can get the email. We'll see if I can get that email put in the chat.
Okay, great. Okay, and you didn't know how often the NYPD was monitoring, did you?
No, I don't have that.
Okay. So if you can get back to us on that. And I remember that in your guidelines, you had a reference to staffed barriers. And I just wondered what you meant by that. Was that the original requirement, which is no longer required?
Yes, that was in an original. Now it's no longer the case. It would be difficult.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions to the bids. Most of them you both really covered at this point, but
we have one more question from an attendee, Shirley, when you're done.
Then we should have the attendee and then I can get back. Okay, attendee. And that is, Charles John Caffiera. How are you, Charles? Charles?
Hold on. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, can hear you.
I owe you a phone call, Shirley. I apologize profusely. Don't hate me. And
I don't hate you.
I will call you.
You ask your question, Charles.
So the question I have is what does DOT consider an ideal site for an open street, or the parameters that they consider ideal for an open street?
That's an interesting question.
Parameters for open street. That's not an easy one for me to answer. I mean, obviously we are looking at streets that doesn't have any major impacts. You know, obviously if there's, you know, multiple construction projects, you know, a street that has a hospital on it, anything that, you know, doesn't, I mean, I would say typically a street that is, if it's pretty much residential and only cars that go through it, then that would be an ideal street maybe. Because then, you know, it would only be used by, you know, folks who live there and anyone who's passing by.
So let me give you an example. Maybe that would help. Okay. Lafayette Street, say from Houston to Astor Place, or Mercer Street from Bleecker to Waverly. Which one of those? I mean, Lafayette doesn't have a lot of traffic on it, especially these days. It's not really, it's mixed use. Mercer is pretty much residential and NYU owned. So those are two different examples. What would you consider either one of those as good candidates for an open street?
I think those would have potential. I don't know. Well, right now I'm not looking at the, you know, Google Maps to see what's out there. I think it does have potential though, just based on memory of being there.
And just one other thing from DOT is, are you, you know, if someone brought up the vehicles, alternate vehicles, and their hazardousness of running people down. I've been almost hit 3 times. Is there, are they putting any kind of restrictions on these e-vehicles versus pedestrians? Are they, DOT putting out any markers like you do, when you do the usual open streets in the summertime? Because we have open street, Lafayette is an open street during the summer. You kind of put like, you know,
Summer Street, right?
Yeah. What was it again?
Summer Street.
Summer Street.
Summer Street. That's
yeah.
different.
So you had
Summer Street,
you had pedestrian lane, and you had you know, a bicycle lane. You know, right now we have e-bikes which are riding on the streets, and scooters which zoom by at the speed of a car, and all sorts of other electronic alternate vehicles. Can we do you separate them at all when you have these open streets with cones or anything?
We do not.
Okay. I'm finished. Thank you, Shirley.
Okay, thanks, Charles. What was the street that you said was a potentially good open street that Charles mentioned?
Mercer, because it runs from Bleecker to, because there's construction between Bleecker and Houston with the NYU monstrosity that's being built.
Right.
From Bleecker, and it's monstrosity. It's gigantic. The shadow it casts is just amazing. Anyway, from Bleecker to 8th Street is basically NYU territory and residential buildings, and it's quiet.
If you remember, we had significant testimony against that, and then the construction truck access going to that NYU site goes pretty far north, because the trucks all stage on Lafayette and come in all through the morning with all the big metal beams.
This is Mercer.
Yeah, on Mercer. Their
Oh,
truck
yeah,
routes
that
are-
was the concern, Charles.
They use
because of
Mercer.
the
The trucks
construction
use
site.
Mercer Street to bring in.
Yeah, the cranes, if you just walk over there in the mornings, you see the cranes hoisting up the stuff.
That's between Bleecker
and
Houston. Yeah. So
Bleecker and Mercer is where the crane is.
Right, there was really tremendous opposition against that.
but we just don't do that block. Start it at Bleecker and go north to 8th Street.
But the trucks come down Mercer Street. They can only make turns on certain crosstown streets.
That's unfortunate. And which was the other one that you suggested, Charles?
Lafayette, because summer streets, we do summer streets on Lafayette
Right.
from Houston to Astor Place.
So what would you say, Lafayette, between where and where?
Houston north to Astor Place.
Okay.
Because you have a northbound street with Bowery, because remember Bowery goes two ways, you know, from Houston to 20th Street. So you have a northbound street that could be used as an alternative.
Okay, thank you. And Jennifer, you said that that one was feasible?
For Lafayette, to me, I think it's feasible. I don't know, you know, some of my other colleagues may think otherwise.
Right.
But I don't know if I've seen anyone apply for Lafayette, though.
Well, that's why I was asking that question, because I was thinking of, you know, somebody, Chartreuse put up the link to your website, so I'll go take a look at it. And okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Ritu, do you see anyone else that I keep on missing? No, okay. I'm going to get back to my questions to Ellen and Jeffrey, and Jake too. So the street in general, Jeffrey, I guess I'll ask you first, are there more people than previously using those streets?
Yes, and I would say it's been, you know, I'm a member of Community Board 4, and we've had distinct issues with streets, open streets uses up in Hell's Kitchen where I live. But in terms of meatpacking, I mean, when number of restaurants reopened, they've certainly been more utilized, allowed for folks to actually spread out more, which to me is the whole purpose of the street, to safely be able to spread out. It's been for good and for bad, I'll be honest, right? Like we've actually seen a lot more need for sanitation in the streets because people are lazy and for some reason feel the need to litter when that street is open. But yeah, I mean, I certainly see a friend of mine sent me a picture and that a group of bicyclists had taken a ride that day and decided to end there and had sat all along the sidewalk with all their bikes spaced out because it was safe to be. So yeah, I would say they are.
Well, that's great. That's what they're supposed to do. I guess that's what I'm curious about. And
also, I want to give a shout out. My colleague, Evan Sweet, he didn't get transferred over, but he's been, it's okay, instrumental on my team to making sure our sanitation team is putting the barriers in place and really day-to-day checking in on these things when one of us is not there, or we're not there quite often, unfortunately. So.
Thank you very much, Evan. You think we could do it now, Carter? Or is it? I mean, it's kind of,
I'm sorry, what was the...
I'm not sure there's anything to add. I just wanted to give a shout out to him since I didn't have him brought over in the beginning. So I just wanted to thank you.
Great.
You guys have done a tremendous job. Tremendous.
Thank you, Ritu.
Yeah. No, she's right there in the area. Okay. And so Ellen, how about you? You said that it was a kind of a quiet street, the one that has so far been designated. I mean, would you say there are more people than before, or?
I just want to say I love Evan also.
Bravo to you, Evan.
You know, for us, we are a largely commercial neighborhood. And actually 83% of our daytime population is workers. Wow. So we don't have a lot of residents and a lot of people who do live in the neighborhood, frankly, are not there. People, I guess, have fled a little bit, but I think what's really important is that if people are using the one open street we have, we do very much want the other two. but I think it's very important that people are beginning to think about sidewalks and even streets as potential open space. And I think it's very important as we all adapt to new modes of thinking about how we use our open space. I do think it's been successful in that way.
That's great. So there was one more question. Jeffrey again, I guess. Jeffrey, you there?
Shirley, I am on the stand for you this evening.
Oh, I thank you, Jeffrey. Anyhow, one more question. Are they using masks? Ellen, I can ask you that one too. They are. Ellen says yes. So they're using masks on your open streets?
Yes, but I will say one of my bigger pushes besides open streets is creating usable public space right now. As you know, we have Gansevoort Plaza and all of our new 30,000 square feet of plazas in the district, and we have not set up our tables and chairs. And so what folks are doing is they're getting takeout, and then they're sitting on the granite blocks that are there, and they're clustering, whether it's a couple or a small group of friends. The governor's order has said that groups of 10 or less are permitted right now. And as annoying it is for me sometimes to see folks without masks, when you realize it's a group of 2 or 3 people and they're having, their bite of food and their drink of whatever, they're doing it. So beyond this open streets thing, a big thing for me is creating usable public space, which for us is going to be fewer tables. But yeah, overall, I would say we have good mask compliance. And we're working on signage for our plazas as well to be sure to encourage social distancing, signage, trash removal, all that kind of stuff.
Very encouraging. And as Ellen was saying, thinking about the future too, and looking at new models. And so it's good to see that these new models may have some potential. Okay, so did I have any other? Oh yeah, what kind of feedback have you been getting? From the folks that are using the streets and the folks in the district. Positive, negative, nothing?
We're only getting good feedback. We're not getting a lot of feedback, but it's all good.
Okay, how about you, Jeff?
Ditto to what Ellen said. And like I said, on the first 2 days, the speaker's office received criticism that it wasn't good enough.
Oh,
and I'm happy with that type of criticism to push us to make it better, safer, and just a more proper street treatment.
Okay, and I guess that's really what that's all about, is so that it can guide you in that way. And let's see, is there anything else? Oh yeah, do you two have ideas for improving the program?
Self-certification.
You asked the wrong 2 people. You asked the wrong 2 people, Shirley. Ellen and I always have lots of ideas.
Well, that's what I figured. I guess I know that you would. That's why I'm asking that question. So you want to go first, Jeff? Well, ladies first, Ellen?
Ellen said self-certification. I think that has a huge part to do with it. I think the city setting some real directions, guidelines, right? If you have this, this, and this, you can do it. If you don't meet these qualifications, you can't do it. Or you do it differently, and here's why. I've been happy, as challenging as it's been sometimes, to be about this process where we learn as we go. And given the circumstances, it's an appropriate time to do that. But when the city ramps back up, we need to be able to act accordingly. So strengthening the guidelines to me is critical. And that I think could go a long way.
I think I want to really, I echoed before what Janet said about calling it a shared street and not an open street. And I think Charles' question before was terrific. What are the criteria? How do you know when a street is a candidate for an open street? Boy, we'd love to hear the answer to that.
Right. So
I might not always agree with the answer, but.
Okay. So guidelines, and not what DOT is calling guidelines right now, because they do talk about guidelines, but really very specific guidelines and broken down more, I guess.
Yeah, I think that the issue is we need real interagency conversation and coordination about this while the guidelines are being set. We can't have DOT authorize something only to have PD say it doesn't work, or the fire department say it doesn't work. We have to have a coordinated approach backed by a sense that this is something we want to make happen, not something we want to stop from happening, but something we want to make happen. So I think, look, the answer to almost all these questions is leadership.
Right. Okay. So Jennifer, I hope you're making notes. Are you, Jennifer? Where's Jennifer? Okay, I'm making notes anyhow. I'll send them to Jennifer as well. I think those, oh, there goes Dan, I think, right?
Yes, I have a couple questions. Oh, just one question, and it revolves around barriers, and it's actually for Ellen and Jeffrey. And thank you so much for educating us tonight. Thank you for your time, Jennifer. You know, in Europe, they have gates that are thin that you kind of bring down and you bring up. And I guess my first tier of the question is, are these barriers a problem? They're too heavy, they're too light, they blow away. I actually think Carter has a really good point that temporary banner, any kind of thing temporary on the street, if it's not being used now as a weapon, could be weaponized in the future for whatever purpose. But, and this is for Jennifer and for you guys, you think more of a permanent structure, even if it's not a heavy duty gate, but something that just gives people the perception you can't go through there. And the fire department could have a key, and the bids could have a key, and the police could have a key, or maybe maybe there's some way to make it that you're not constantly putting things away. It solves a few problems. Or what am I not seeing that is an issue?
Jeffrey, do you want to talk to that? I don't know where Jennifer is.
Dan, I wish I would have that be a thing in a heartbeat.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
A permanent structure, and
and what it does is it self-polices the time it's closed and open, and it doesn't require a lot of maintenance. And when there's an emergency, it's easily opened.
Right.
But I'm like saying, this is not a new idea. They have it in every small town in Germany.
Jennifer, you're unmuted, just so you know, on your phone. And I don't know if you're familiar with the type of gates that Dan is mentioning, but we can always send you some still photographs or video of that.
Jennifer, you there?
I would. Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
I think in terms of anything that's going to be more permanent, I don't know who's going to be installing them, and I know that it's going to always be something that, you know, I like. It wouldn't just be a DOT. It wouldn't only be removed by DOT. That's what I was going to say.
So it would be
like, I know, like, I'm sure fire department, NYPD, they will also have to weigh in on it as well.
Okay. Anybody else want to make any more comments? I'm done with my questions. Any more questions, comments? You two, how is the chat room doing? Anything?
Chat room, I think is
nothing.
Okay.
No comments of particular urgency.
I just want to say one thing. We are looking at finding a way to make a network in the meatpacking district. And if the community board or the city would think about how we can make a network of open streets. Ellen and I probably would love to connect our districts with an open street, right? We actually have a huge number of workers who mix between our two neighborhoods. And imagine Greenwich or Washington, finding its way, Hudson, that would be a little tricky, but Greenwich or Washington, what about a shared street? Finding ways to network communities that isn't just for cars, but about moving people in a bigger, safer way. And that's been my ask from DOT all along, to make a network within meatpacking that connects outside. We've thought about our connections to the Hudson River and the Greenway as well. So how can we do that neighborhood to neighborhood? And that would be the big ask I would make if there is to be one.
Right, okay.
I think that's probably one of the most important points is linking the different neighborhoods. And that's one of the reasons why I was asking the parameters and knowing what streets already been set up, and we've got them listed here, or, plotting them on a map and then looking at them and then seeing what streets we can recommend that would connect those streets, would create a more cohesive, flow from one neighborhood to the other, which is what we're looking to really want to do.
Yeah, and right now, unless that would have to come out of an actual plan between the agencies, I think. This is not something, we could ask for it, by the way. But it's more than just the way the system works now, which is by application. So applications, I guess, in a way, are kind of scattershot. So I would imagine it would have to come about as a result of a concerted plan, right? Okay. But we have a lot of.
If I may, Shirley,
yes.
Never let a good crisis go to waste.
That's true.
Yeah, and the plan could come out of the crisis and come out of what you guys are already doing. If we plot them on a map, we could see what would be I'm sure a street or two or three will come up and jump out at us and say, hey, let's get this, and then find somebody to make an application for it. So, not putting so much onus on DOT, which I'm sure they're already on overload with this, because this is a very avant-garde concept for DOT. And we're very happy that they're thinking outside the box, but we can help them, and we could just plot it on a map, and that'll be our plan.
Right. Do you think it's just DOT that would be involved in this? That's
No.
what I would think too.
Yeah,
It's more than DOT.
you got a lot of people involved.
Yeah, okay.
Janet has a question.
Okay.
Well, it's sort of a question statement, but when we first investigated this, if you recall, we did create a network. When we had solicited ideas, our transportation committee we had worked out a network for CB2. And we tabled it because it wasn't generated, each of our requests didn't have an actual block association affiliate.
Sponsor.
Can we resurrect that? Can we see it? Shirley?
I guess I could dig it up.
That sounds like a start.
Well, actually, I know what I think the start would be is you would have to have a planning process. And I think it would have to be across community boards, because you really are talking about beyond our neighborhoods, right? Unless I'm mistaken.
No, I would keep it in our neighborhood, our district. I would keep it
so
in.
What does everybody else feel about that, since we're talking about that? And then we're going to go into business session.
William Benish has a question.
Okay.
Yes, I just had a quick question regarding this concept of planning out the network of streets. Does the DOT, have they been keeping track of any data that tracks how much various streets have been used in, say, the past month or so?
Jennifer?
That's a good question. I don't have an answer. I can certainly ask. When you say how the streets are being used, are you referring to any of the streets or the open streets itself?
No, I meant mainly vehicular traffic on various streets, because I imagine knowing how much each street's being used by vehicles is an important factor when deciding, which ones are good candidates for open streets.
Let me look into that. I can check.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm really trying to think about, I think what we'll do is we'll discuss how we might recommend formulating a network of open streets in business session. So if nobody else of our guests has anything to say right now, we're gonna segue into business session. So I think really, let's start with that. First of all, I would like to get a straw vote from the committee on whether you think we should do a resolution.
Can you say that one more time, Shirley? There was a beeping.
I'm sorry?
Say that one more time. There was a beeping. I couldn't hear it.
Okay. I would just like to raise your hand if you think we should do a resolution tonight with certain requests and recommendations. Just raise your hands and I will look. Does that mean nobody wants, Dan wants to do a resolution. Does anybody else want to do this? Adam does. Just hit your little raise hand so we can see. Can you do that? Can you hit it? I see Adam's hitting it, Dan's hitting it. Does anybody else feel we're ready to do a resolution tonight? No. Okay, I think the nays have it. Okay, you know what I'm going to do then? I will do the report. I will separate out all the suggestions that we have received that I think many of them are quite constructive, and maybe based on those suggestions, next month we can revisit them if the committee would like to do that. Okay? Joe is going to point his finger up. Janet is too. Ritu, how do you feel about that?
That sounds good.
Okay, and Adam, I see. Adam and
Lois is
and Lois is raising her hand. Okay.
Yep.
Are you raising your hand in
Yeah,
agreement?
I like your idea, Shirley. No resolution yet. In a month, things can change in the good, I hope. And then we'll deal with the resolution if necessary. But I like what you like about a report and then isolating the suggestions.
Will do. Okay.
Shirley,
So,
what do you think? Do you think that we shouldn't have a resolution? We've heard so many great points by Ellen tonight and Jeffrey, and some things that honestly it doesn't sound like the DOT's been thinking about. You don't think it's going to help to put those up now, even though we know they can't be implemented?
I don't think. I go by what the committee wants. Obviously, I suggested the possibility of a resolution because I thought we might be ready to do something. But what I can do is I can do the report and I can send the, Lois, that was a good word, isolated concepts on the side, and then you can all look them over, and I hope you will promise to get back to me immediately once I send them to say whether you think all these pointers are worthy of doing a resolution. How's that? How's that?
Perfect.
Okay. So I thank, first of all, I thank Ellen, Jeffrey, Jake, and Jeffrey's assistant. I forgot his name.
Evan.
What is it?
Evan.
Evan and Evan for your work on these open streets and for your tremendously constructive and helpful input tonight. We really, I think, all learned a lot. Thank you to Ritu and Joe and Carter and Valerie. I see Valerie is here too and helping out with doing a little bit of the technological backup there and beyond. Joseph with the timing, and Ritu with looking at all those chat rooms and people raising their hands that I didn't even see. Thank you so much. And for all of your participation. And Charles, good to see you. Hope to see you soon. And thanks for your interesting input. Thanks for everybody's interesting input. I'm saying this because we're ending so early. Anyhow, I will get this stuff to you, committee, and then you will get back to me to let me know if you think those pointers are ripe for a resolution. So in the meantime, have a nice weekend.
Bye, everybody.
Let's hope that we have, a more peaceful one, and all our problems are resolved.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye.
Good night, all.
Thanks, Shirley.